Good evening, televiewers. You're welcome to Prime Hour. Today's edition is going to be focusing on our finance law for the year 2023, a law that was voted during this ended November session of the National Assembly, a session that saw the voting into law of certain aspects that have been described as very disturbing to the common man. We're going to be asking the question and understanding why the increase from 1,000 francs to 1,500 francs for the cost of a fiscal stamp. We also are going to be looking at the reasons behind the increment in obtaining the roadworthiness certificate and a host of others. What could be the rationale behind this increase, and how do we also understand that this is not accompanied by other measures aimed at rendering the lives of Cameroonians better, that is loosening up certain aspects of our economy? We are looking at this evening with panelists who are in the house already. Edmond, Kuate, an economist who is supposed to be with us this evening, is yet to join us for the edition. He's caught in traffic. He just told me that he's on his way. He's going to join us, but already in the studio with me is Dr. Micheal Ndimancho, who is a lecturer in some universities across Cameroon. Good evening, Doctor, and welcome.
Thanks so much, Mr. Leo. It's a pleasure to be here, especially to talk about a sensitive topic, a topic that touches on all Cameroonians, and of course, anything that the parliamentarians, they decide, who we call the lawmakers, they decide, touches on every crook and cranny of Cameroon, and even the person who lives in the most remote area in Cameroon is supposed to feel what the parliament put, especially as it concerns the budget, because no one can escape the wrath of the financial burden that is going to go with what the parliaments have voted. Thanks so much for inviting me, Mr. Leo.
Okay, sitting in for one other panelist who also indicated that he has an emergency is Tamai Chavis, journalist who works with us in the house. Good evening, Chavis, and welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Kum. Good evening to the peace-loving people of Way Village, and of course, a special good evening to our members of parliament who are working so hard to see how the nation will move into different perspective. However, we are seeing that the full law of motion, momentum before collision, momentum after collision is taking its place, as well as for every reaction there's an equal but opposite. For every action there's an equal but opposite reaction. We are seeing it, and it's kind of a difficult moment for the nation itself.
Okay, we also are in the company of Mr. Elijah Enoaku, who is going to be joining us live from Canada. Good evening, Mr. Elijah. You wear many caps. We are glad to have you.
Good evening, Mr. Leo. Can you hear me?
How are you today?
Good evening to you, and good evening to all the televiewers of my Media Prime. And it's good to join you again after a long time. And hopefully we can have a fruitful discussion about this plaguing issue that Cameroonians all over the world have been talking about, and why government has to raise taxes on them, if there's any rationale for that or not. So thanks for having me for today.
I'll start the program with you, Mr. Elijah. There should be reasons, good reasons enough to increase taxes across the different domains that we are going to be looking at it. We have the Vignette, we have the roadworthiness, and we have the fiscal stamp, and a host of others. For a government to engage in such an action, there should be very good motivations.
Yeah, Leo, Mr. Leo, there's so many reasons why government can increase taxes. So we want to be fair here in our discussion. In every country all over the world, government has rationale why they increase taxes. They want the roads, construction, education, maybe military, so many reasons. But what many people are asking, the question that many people are asking is, what is the rationale for the government of Cameroon to increase taxes and increase all these, what you just mentioned, the fiscal tax or whatever it is. What's the rationale for that? Because if you look at economies, the way economies function, when a government wants to increase taxes, you do not go after the vulnerable sector of the economy. You go after the sector that is making more money, that you tax benefits. But if you look at what the Cameroon government is taxing, you ask yourself, where's the benefit coming from? From road cars that are on the road or fiscal stamp? Where is those who are buying those fiscal stamps? Where's the benefit they're making from those fiscal stamps that you're going to tax? That's the question that the government of Cameroon has not been able to answer, because when you are taxing an incremental income or incremental benefits that people are making on a particular business. But what you see the government of Cameroon taxing, to me, it's like milking the cow. There's no rationale for all those sectors that you mentioned there. There's no rationale for taxing those sectors because there is no incremental benefit that those sectors or whoever is involved in that sector has proven that there is a benefit that he or she is building from there. When somebody goes to buy a fiscal stamp, what benefit is he getting from that? It's actually the government that's getting from that. So there is no actual benefit or gain that the person is actually producing by buying those taxes that the government say, oh, you're making an incremental income from selling this or buying these taxes, therefore I'm going to tax it. It is basically a cash cow. The government of Cameroon is in a very dire situation and they're doing everything to milk the cow. But the unfortunate thing is that when you milk the cow and the cow dies, you have a dead economy. You have a dead economy. So it is not a very, very good thing for the government to be taxing the vulnerable sector of the economy. Because who are those who buy those taxes? If you want to take an exam in Cameroon, you're going to buy a fiscal stamp. If you want to go for a competitive entrance exam, you're going to buy a fiscal stamp. Those who are running cars, they're going to buy a stamp for their car and increment. So you look at the sector of the economy that is involved with these taxes, or those who are supposed to supply these taxes to the government, it is the vulnerable sector of the economy. So again, the government is going after the wrong people. Tax the rich, don't tax the poor. There's any country in the world that taxes the poor, you're going to fail.
Okay, you're going to fail, but Dr. Micheal, where is the need for this rise in taxes of some of these issues coming from? Is it coming because the lawmakers are the MPs? Is it the MPs who have seen the need to tax this, or is the government that needs more money to finance some of its projects and then submit it to our MPs to say, we need money, and the MPs say, okay, go get it?
Of course, Mr. Leo, let us understand the context of what tax is all about. Tax is actually an amount of money that the government imposes on the people, and it is meant for the government to be able to execute some services for the population. Of course, that is money paid to the government, and the government uses that money to render services to the community, to citizens. That is it, and that's what tax is all about. And to ask whether it is they are the MPs that actually see the desire for this, or it is the government, I think that the government services and the MPs, they are supposed to work hand in hand. Their services are interwoven because what the MPs they ask is actually something that they have studied, their views that they study, and that they have deemed necessary that the government has to actually impose these taxes on the population. But unfortunately, what we get to understand is actually that our MPs in Cameroon are people who actually don't sit and actually read the laws and read these bills and understand, because these MPs are people who come from the grassroots. These are people who are supposed to have been voted by the grassroots population and who knows exactly the reality of the grassroots. And when you actually see some kind of bills that are voted in parliament, you begin to ask yourself, what are these MPs? Of course, they represent the people in the grassroots. Because you will not go voting certain rules that you know that actually the people are suffering and then you go voting these rules, and you know that they are going to penalize your people. We look at a country like in Cameroon, actually, that is suffering from, it's inflation and some of all those things. Cameroon that is plagued by a devastating high poverty. Cameroon that is struggling in education. Cameroon that is struggling in poor healthcare system and some of those things. And then the MPs, they just go and they think that they have to vote a bill. It is like today, the Cameroon government is robbing Peter to pay Paul. Let me put this clearly. When we started early, it was last year when they started about the issue of the mobile phone tax. We said this is, more is going to come. When the government started taxing people's wallet, I have my wallet and the government taxes my wallet. This is my pocket, and the government decides to tax that wallet. And on the contrary, the government is supposed to protect, so that what I have in my pocket will be able to sustain me, sustain my family. But when the government gets right into my wallet, it means getting into my bedroom to tax me on the bed I'm sleeping on, to tax me, my wallet, my private wallet, then we knew that a lot more was going to come. But you see, the MPs, we have decried this issue of MPs who go to a National Assembly not to represent the people, but to represent their own selves. And we are asking ourselves, because what they have done, they are just doing tax, the fiscal stamps and the vignette and all of those things. They has a lot of ramification. And what are the ramifications? When you put taxes on fiscal stamp, it affects, most importantly, the teachers of the basic education. It affects the teachers of the secondary education. It affects the teachers of the higher education, because these are the people, most people who use those stamps. And the second issue that I will stand to condemn is, what about those teachers who lives in rural areas, who don't actually have to have the revenue to be able to contest or to go in for entrance exams or for what we call concours and be able to pay for these stamps? Are you ostracizing them from some of these privileges or from some of these government entrance exams that they are supposed to get in for? Or what are you supporting them to be able to be inclusive in the government activities, or you want to be exclusive? I think that there is a lot more that we have to think about, because when you tax, like fiscal stamps, and we thought it was going to decrease, because fiscal stamp step from 500 to 1,000 to 1,500 francs. It is not just about the fiscal stamp, it is about the price of transport, the transportation cost that is going to increase for the population. It is also about the price of basic commodities, food and all of those things. I'm talking about the ramification of all this. And is the government having strategies? And the MPs are supposed to be the strategies that we have. They are supposed to look ahead, to study ahead, and look at the consequences that we are going to incur in just increasing the price. Yes, we know taxes are supposed to help the government realize some projects, economic project, route constructions and health hospitals and all of those things. But when we think that these things are actually out to kill the economy, I think the government should look otherwise. And the otherwise the government should look is that the government should use its incentive to be able to think about the other avenues of increasing the GDP, rather than taxing some of those things that immediately affect the household and make Cameroonians miserable in it all.
Miserable in it all. The government certainly needs money to solve some issues. Why this outcry? Why do people not also have solidarity with the government that has needs to sort out some of its problems?
Generally, the economic situation of Cameroon is the same in most African countries following the outbreak of COVID-19, which affected a lot of businesses and affected a lot of government fundings where government probably relied on money. But your question is, why is it that the people are not in solidarity with the government at this difficult time? It stems from the fact that the people are angry with the previous management of the money, when it was at the time. Remember, we've not had the National Day celebration in this country for some years now, since the outbreak of COVID-19. And one would have expected that the money not used for the celebration, which usually stems to billions of CFA, would have been used for other services. Also, one would have imagined that the money which were allocated for other projects in the nation were actually realized. Remember that if people see that projects are realized with money, they will not have problems. For example, look at the Douala, the Boya Douala road currently, and if they tell you that a toll gate will soon be on that road, which will be an electric toll gate, for a common man to say that the growth is a death trap is a problem. And come now to look at, why does the government need tax? Of course, every country, every citizen must pay the tax. A tax is a composite levy on citizens, either directly or indirectly, to enable the government to provide basic and vital services, such as defense, such as relief, disaster relief, and also such as for the education, for health sector. We all need this. We are crying that they see security in some part of the country. We need defense, and defense go with ammunition. We are crying that we don't have good hospitals. So have good hospitals, you need money. We are crying that disasters are existing everywhere. So have this assistance, you need money. However, the question now we should ask ourselves, does this tax imposed by the government follow the canon of tax? The people are crying because it doesn't follow the canon of a good tax system proposed by Adam Smith. The canon of a good tax system is based on 5 cardinal principles: 1, equity; 2, certainty; 3, economy; 4, flexibility; and 5, the tax must be able to meet the reality on the ground. When we go to this current tax system, equity, does it meet equity? It doesn't meet equity. Why? That's why you see the people are crying. The people are crying because here is taxing the poor than taxing the rich, which means that if you are taxing the poor who are barely barely struggling to survive, per average dollar per day to eat, they are struggling to survive, is going to be a problem to them. And also, let's come now to the certainty. The people are not certain that they can be able to have some of this money. How certain is this amount? And convenient? It's not convenient for them, because if you look at the conveniency of this tax system goes a long way for those who have to make national identity card. You and I know, with Dr. Ndimancho and Elijah also should be aware about the difficulties it takes for us to proceed or to have ID card, original copies of an ID card being given. And these people who have to also follow documents to open their businesses, they need physical stamp. These people who have to do transportation, the prices for Vignette and others have increased. So that's why the people are not in solidarity with the government, because the parliament that ought to have been the brigade to check the usage of the resources, they have not been able to do so. And so a lot of money has gone down the drain, and now we are coming back to squeeze water out of rock. It is important to note that Cameroonians, as we speak now, are barely struggling to put food on their table. Look at 3 cups of gari used to be sold for 100 francs. It later moved on to 2 cups of gari for 100. And now, as we speak, there are some sales quarters where 1 cup of gari is 75 francs, and 3 cups of salt used to be sold for 100. Now it moved to 2 per 100. How the common man survive, only God knows. We move to the other aspect of groundnut. A cup of groundnut used to be sold for 75, sometimes 50. Now to have a cup of groundnut, you're talking about 100, 125. A cup of beans used to be sold for 50, and 2 cups for 100. Now you're talking about a different price of cup of beans. Move to a cup of rice. We used to have 3 cups of rice, 100. Or sometimes it moved to 50 cups, 50 per a cup, and now we are talking about 3 cups of rice for 200, and sometimes 2 cups for 200, depending on the quality. You sum up this, therefore, you see why the common man has no means of at least paying solidarity to this increase in taxes, because of the fact that there have been a consistent increase in basic commodities, and they cannot catch up with these basic commodities. A liter of groundnut oil, what you call vegetable oil, used to be sold at 900, but now we are talking about 1,600. In some quarters, we are talking about 1,800. You now do this balance sheet, therefore, can the common man survive? The basic answer is no. We are not saying that the government ought not to have increased the tax. Yes, they ought to have increased the tax, but at what cost? At what consequence? At what effect? The increment has a lot of effect on the life of the common man. Transportation will increase. Currently, as you speak, for you to leave Mile 17 to come to Boya, if you are taking the normal Clando system, what we call the unauthorized transport system, which are not legal, it is 2,000 for that which we call sans usage. Sans usage, for those who are not Cameroonians, should understand those if you sit without respecting the normal rules, that's one pair, one in front and three behind. If you have to sit 2 in front and 4 behind, it's 2,000 for a journey of how many kilometers? Now, if you have to take Susach, it's 2,500. If you have to take the normal bus service, it's 1,500. Now, look at this increment in this vignette. Look at this increment in the roadworthiness. It will therefore increase, which means that if you have to move to Boya to go and buy, and you need to go and sell, you have to increase. So it's a double effect. That's why you see the common man. It's not a solidarity.
Good evening, Mr. Leo. Truth be told, MPs have failed completely. What they are concerned about is their families. We can't be crying day in, day out of hardship, but yet taxes are instead increased. The common man faces it than any other Cameroonian. My regards to Dr. Micheal Ndimancho. Good evening to you. Okay. Irene, writing from Bomenda. Yes, Irene, if you can send names, I'll be glad. Stop calling, just send your message and I'll read them. Mr. Leo, those parliamentarians are just cruel and selfish. When they came to compile documents for their senatorial candidacy, the highest they could pay for land tax was 5,000 francs. They argued and even scolded at us. It's so shameful. Okay, if you have the names, you can share with us. Now, Mr. Elijah, when we look at the timing for this, the government will argue that we need money because we also are in difficulties. But did the MPs who voted this law also read through what the people have gone through this year, owing to the fact that we have witnessed almost an increase in every basic commodity in our markets? Did they take note of that aspect also?
Mr. Leo, let me tell you this. Let's just be clear on what's going on here. The government balance sheet and the government books are in red.
Mr. Elijah, it appears your camera is not on. Can you turn it on?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, can you turn it on?
Okay. I don't know what's going on. Yeah, sorry about that.
Okay, yeah.
So,
go on.
as I was saying, the government is in red. Government books are in red. Let's just call a spade a spade. The government is doing a lot of things that is sending them into the red books. Number one, the Cameroon government is drunk with debt. The debt to GDP ratio in Cameroon, the Cameroon government is 46%. That's to say for every, let's put it in dollar terms, let's say for every dollar that the Cameroon government collects in taxes, it pays 45 cents in servicing debt. That's what's going on here. Number two, the war that's happening in the northern and the southwest is ravaging the government. So the government needs money. But the government's going after the wrong people to get that money. The salaries in Cameroon have never risen. And when you start taxing people with that mega sum of money as an income, what you're doing is that you are killing the very force that is supposed to produce the work and the workman of the economy. You're decimating that sector of the economy. Tell me, you also saw in that budget that the price of rice, I think it went from, can't remember what it increased by, but it increased significantly. Rice is not a competitive product in Cameroon. There is none of rice that is lying down somewhere, and somebody has not eaten that. The government is going to say, I want to tax this rice so that people can start buying the rice. It doesn't exist. There is food insecurity in Cameroon. It's not sufficient. So the government is only going after that sector of the economy where people need to buy either in order to survive. You need to buy rice. That is the stable food in Cameroon. You need to buy Fiscal stamp because people are going in for competitive entrance examination. You need to buy a Vignette because, all those transportation cars, people need to go from one place to the other. And let me tell everyone this, that those taxes that the government is imposing on people, they get passed down the line to the common man. Because somebody might ask the question, okay, the Vignette tax, they've just increased it. It doesn't really affect me. But this is how it affects you. At the end of the day, the transportation group or group of transporters, if you were paying 2,500 or 3,000 from Douala to Kumba, you're going to start paying out maybe 4,000 because they have to pass that tax somehow to the consumer. So in the nutshell, everybody in the country suffers. And number two, you asked me a question about those MPs. That's a political question. I don't know if you really want to hear my answer because those people are just hand clappers, Mr. Leo. That's just the truth. They do not read any bills in that parliament. The government comes there with a bulk of bills placed on the table, they get off of bed and just vote along party lines. If you read this bill critically, you're coming from Ginicom, you're coming from whom, you're coming from Patsville, you're coming from wherever, and you see the suffering of your people, and you go and vote yes. Do you represent these people? You vote yes for a stable product that's where people depend on. It's going to drastically increase suffering of the people that you present. Then you're not MP. You're simply representing your government. And there's something in Cameroon that is so terrible that you toe party line. If the party says that this is what needs to be voted upon, everybody must vote that way. If you vote against it, you're going to be disciplined with party line. That is what's happening in Cameroon. Nobody votes anything based on what he thinks is right, but they just vote based on what the party says. This is what it is. Now, that says that, Mr. Leo, if you look at the bill says that one of the reasons the government increases taxes is because they want to create jobs. They've been saying this years over years. How many jobs have the Cameroon government created in this country? But they will increase taxes. They say roads. We have all the ring roads that are suffering there. We have the road from Douala to Yaoundé that has become, they call it in French, Route de la Mort. People are dying every day. The road is not constructed. And you keep saying we're increasing taxes because we're going to build schools, we're going to increase jobs. And that is not happening. The real problem is that the government is a problem because of these issues that we are talking about. There is so much corruption in the country. Even the taxes that the government is going to be collecting, the money is probably not going to go into the coffers of the government because you have corrupt people that are going to embezzle this money, and one person embezzling billions of CFA. At the end of the day, the government books continue to remain in the red. That is the problem we are facing in Cameroon. The government is in crisis. The government coffers are dry. Government should look at reducing all those minister of this, minister without portfolio, minister with portfolio. In the same ministry house, minister delegate, minister of portfolio, minister without portfolio. What are those ministers doing? Those are the people that are drying the coffers of this nation, and the government needs to get rid of them. Get rid of those people.
Okay, but these persons, you say get rid of these persons. They are voted. They were not appointed by the government. Dr. Ndimancho.
No, I'm talking about those government ministers.
Okay, you're talking of. Okay, now, Dr. Ndimancho, we're talking about this law. It is like there was a law on telephone. Yes, telephone law.
Mobile tax, mobile money tax.
No, telephone. There was yes, which was recalled by the President of the Republic. Yes, but now when these laws are voted and decisions are taken, where do we find the nuance between the people accepting what has been passed as law or voted as law? Is it the failure of either the executive or the MPs to seek public opinion before passing such laws, or at least explaining to them the motives behind this?
Mr. Leo, it's a good question, and that is why laws that are passed in the National Assembly are supposed to be studied. And that's why we talk about debates in the National Assembly. And I'm of the opinion now that I share the opinion of other people to say that there's what we call the monologue. There's monologue in the National Assembly in Cameroon. Because the laws are supposed to be debated upon. If I'm representing, if I'm a parliamentarian for Noni, and I go to the National Assembly and a law is being passed, of course, in Cameroon, we hardly have private views. But we have the government views that are passed because of government wants to protect, its image. I should be able to say the reality of my people in the grassroots. That is what we talk about debate. But unfortunately, some of these laws, since we know that most parliamentarians who go to the National Assembly are not learned enough, I'm sorry to say this, or are not really informed. These laws are sometimes passed, they pass them, the booklets, at about midnight or 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. when they are already tired even to read the laws and analyze and be able to be conversant with what is going to be passed the next day. And you know, when a sensitive bill to be passed, they know exactly at what time they have to take these people. And secondly, you know that some of these parliamentarians are people, I don't want to call them Mangdiang. They are people who are in offices of ministers in Yaoundé looking for contracts and whatsoever. Some are afraid that if they contradict some of these bills, they will not be given the opportunity, or not be given, the applications. They will not be granted, what their demands thereafter. So you see that it is all about what somebody calls la politique du ventre, whereby people think about themselves. Laws are supposed to be debated upon, and the debate of law is supposed to be multidimensional. It is to be multifaceted. It means that what? You take a law and you think about the consequences of a law to your own local population. The parliamentarians are supposed to look at that. You don't look at a law globally in Cameroon as a whole. You look at a law as it will be applied to your people back in your constituency. And say, if this law is applied, how will my people live? And that is what we expect parliamentarians to stand and debate. And then we say laws are supposed to be debated. Parliamentarians are supposed to be lawmakers, those who debate, those who talk, who express their opinion. And it is not their opinions, they are just proxies. It is the opinions of the people that they represent. And unfortunately, we have come to a situation whereby we talk about parliamentarians being Benuis. Benui means that those who just say yes to whatever thing is being granted. As far as, like Mr. Elijah said, there is what we call the party discipline. You feel that if you say no to this, then you will be granted. There are some parties who have Article 8.2, some have Article 62, whatsoever. You are afraid that if you say no, some of these laws, the party's rod will fall on you, and you are going to miss your next opportunity. I was, opportune to discuss with a parliamentarian who told me when he got into the National Assembly, one of his protégés told him, if you want to stay here long, stop your argument. Accept what is being said here. Follow party discipline. Hear the doctrine that is being indoctrinated onto somebody who has just come new into the National Assembly, who thinks that you come and contribute to, what is going on in the country. So, you see that actually there is really no debate. The parliamentarians are supposed to debate. And let me tell you, there's what we call the storming of the Bastille in France. And that happened because the price of bread was increased just because of a 25 francs. You know, the population too has its own role to play. You talk about the phone tax. Do you know that phone tax was refused, was actually cancelled by the president because the population rules? It's because the population rules. And I'm telling you, the Cameroonian population, I don't know whether they have been hypnotized or what is happening. And the government is very sensitive on the Cameroonian population because every other thing can increase, but the price of beer won't increase because they know where Cameroonians will be touched most if that happens. I am asking myself, why so? Why is it only the price of beer that should be increased? Prices of oil, prices of basic commodities are being increased. Fiscal stamp is being increased. Remember, I said fiscal stamp is being increased from 1,000 to 1,500 francs.
We should note that the guys who run these off licenses, actually last year, they wanted to push for an increment in the beer prices, but they were stopped.
You are corroborating what I'm saying. That they cannot touch the beer. You are just saying exactly what I'm saying. That they cannot touch the price of beer because the government knows that if they try and increase the price of beer, there will be an uprising. Look at Sudan. Sudan had a similar thing about bread, and Sudan rose up. And I mean, El-Bashir was one of the reasons why he was upset, because the price of simple bread was increased, and people went up to the street. So you see, look at Vignette increasing from 25,000 pounds to 50,000 pounds. What is the rationale in that? Are they saying that okay, people shouldn't buy cars any longer, or they are saying that many people buy cars and they think that they can make a revenue from that? Fiscal stamp from 1,000 francs to 1,500. Are they saying that people should not go? Oh, okay. Another reason too is that people have analyzed and said the government is suffocated, and they think that the only thing where they can make money now is through the concours. You have even heard about concours who are organized in Cameroon here, and then somebody comes and says nobody succeeded in that concours. It was in national security, and they say nobody succeeded, and people have been asking what was that concours for, and they come out and they say out of all the hundreds of people who wrote, nobody succeeded. We are beginning to accept the fact that the government is suffocated by what is happening, the financial problem in the country, and some of these things is just to make money. You find many concours will be organized in 2023, and the principal thing about this thing is to make money. You find 200 places are needed and 5,000 people go. Now this exposes us to the fact that we are jobless in Cameroon. Look at the bill that is coming out. It is 2023. I mean, you find that for last year we had a budget of about 6,080 billion francs, but today it has been increased by 4.4%. Now to this year we have 6,345.1 billion francs. What is the rationale in it? And nothing is changing. We are seeing the same things that are happening in Cameroon. Somebody even said, yes, revenue is to build roads, and also we have what we call, the toll gate. What is the function of toll gate when you pass and you are going to Buea and you find a lot of potholes in Buea, but you're told there's a toll gate on the route to Buea and we have not seen anything that's been done for? Do you think that is by increasing this that something is going to happen? There is the issue of corruption that the government is not tackling. We think that we have enough money in this country to actually renovate our infrastructure and build a new infrastructure. But the issue of corruption, where have you gone with the COVID gate? Where have you gone with the can gate? Where have you gone with this? It is because money is being swindled, and the very people who are swindling this money are the people who are preparing the bills. They are preparing much more money for themselves the next coming year. So I think that the parliamentarians are voted by the grassroots, and these parliamentarians are supposed to act as pelican. Pelican means that they are supposed to sacrifice themselves for the grassroots. If they cannot argue the bills in parliament, of course, why would they argue? Many of them do not even know back where their different constituencies for the past 4 or 5 years. They don't even know, especially Anglophone parliament. How many of them do go back home? So they cannot even argue for us. So they are there living in their comfort zones, and they are just there for their benefit answers in the National Assembly, which of course we have to argue about.
Yeah, but their lives are threatened. You can imagine what has
happened. Well, lives are, Mr. Leo, when your life is threatened, we have seen how politics is played. Anglo-Saxon politics is played. When your life is threatened, you resign. How many prime ministers have we have in Britain in the past two years? I think
but we are not in Britain now.
We are not in Britain, we are in Cameroon, but are we not the one who are crying for Anglo-Saxon tradition? What are you asking? What answer do you want me to give you?
Okay, we're talking about this. The taxes are being increased. Now, can we also see the overbearing nature of the executive over the legislative? Because if you are an MP, you are an elected official to represent the people. Now, where is the interest of the people that you are representing at the level of the National Assembly in this finance law?
Thy worth no tongue can tell is part of our anthem. If you go by thy worth no tongue can tell, and there's a place there that also says, we will live to your name ever true. We live to your name ever true simply means that the name of Cameroon, and Cameroon stands for justice, Cameroon stands for good governance. But your question is it the fact that the executive has a lot of power, influence over the elected official? The truth is the worth of corruption in Cameroon, no one can tell. The worth of MPs not being able to do their job as they ought to do, no tongue can tell. And they will live to the name of their party ever true, not to that of Cameroon. It's simple. Dr. Micheal Ndimancho raised an issue where he talked about the fact that most of these MPs, especially those of Anglophone descent, or those from the Northwest and Southwest region, to be more precise, or former West Cameroon, don't actually know their constituency. And you talked about the fact that maybe insecurity. But let's go prior to 2016. Did we have insecurity prior to 2016? 2015? How many of them actually organized caucuses? How many of them had town hall discussion? How many of them had meet the people's store in terms of evaluating what their needs are? I think on this note, Mr. Liu, I'll blame the people. Because the people have not become politically conscious to know that they too have a role to play in selecting who represent them. There is always a tendency, a lukewarm attitude when it comes to election in Cameroon. And when it comes to that, we tend to vote people based on our party, on our tribe lines, based on our affiliation to them. You will hear they will say, this man a man for my village, this man a man for my Kuate, this man a man will need for voting because na power, whenever I come for village, he will give you rights. But I want to tell them that Cameroonians are responsible for their MP not being active, and they are responsible for their MP being overshadowed by the executive. And the reason why they are being overshadowed by the executive is because the executive itself has amassed so much powers, and now it has been based on tribal lines, and they tend to see that those who are stealing money, you hear it is our own thief. Allow him, it is our own thief. And when somebody is appointed, the village celebrate not because the person will do the job, they celebrate because their own person has been appointed to go and get money that he can come and invest in the village. The people are responsible for this. When it comes to making political decisions, I know some people who are watching us will say, what is there in election? What is there if we vote, the vote will not change? It will change. Remember what happened in 1992. There was massive voting. And when you have a situation where a lot of people go to the poll to vote, sometimes it becomes increasingly very difficult to rig the election. And when rigged, it's glaring that this was rigged. Now, the executive and the elected officials have failed Cameroonians and have failed their constituency woefully. How many of them do have offices in their constituency? Let's take away the Northwest and Southwest because of insecurity. Let's come now to the other regions. How many of them do have offices in their constituencies that are open from Monday to Friday for consultation of the people in that constituency? Come to Douala. How many have offices? Go to Boya, to Ngaoundéré. How many have offices? All of their offices are in Yaoundé. If not majority are in Yaoundé. And you ask yourself, these MPs...
Yeah, but there are some MPs who have offices that I know.
That's what I'm saying, some few, not all. Just few. And these offices play a great role, because when you have this office and when things like this are echoed about bills, you have to go to your community and call for opinion leaders, sample the opinion of people. I am saddened and my heart is broken when I see this increment. I ask myself, do this MP live among the people? Do they really know the pains of the mother who live in Daido, who struggles under the rain and sun to get food on their table, to struggle to get a liter of red oil that used to be sold at 350, a liter of red oil, which is now approximately around 800 CFA? Does this MP live the reality where our mothers don't even have basic water to drink? Some of them, the water they used to flush in their toilet is 10 times better than the water that some of our parents in the villages, in some cities, in some suburbs do drink. And the reason for tax is to ensure that equal distribution of resources, to ensure that vital services like water, like electricity, like security is catered for. How many of these things are present in this constituency where we live? If we have to go by statistics, Mr. Liu, the executive has an overwhelming impact on the legislature because of greed. It is simply greed. He said it. Dr. Micheal Ndimancho said something very striking. In the Anglo-Saxon culture, not only Anglo-Saxon culture, in normal culture, in the culture of respect, trust and loyalty, One thing is certain, that if things are bad, you resign for the interest of the nation. I want to tell this MP that their family members may be living good, but they should know that in that quarter in Rai, there's difficulties in there. Floods everywhere when it comes to rainy season. We keep reading floods. What have been done to eradicate this flood? If these taxes were being raised to eradicate or to reduce some of this flood, we'll be happy. But now very little is being done. Go to Mabanda, look at how the deplorable situation of the people in that locality.
But where people live in Mabanda, are they supposed to be there?
The questions also come to what have been done to get these people out. Some of them have land titles. How did they have these land titles? You will be shocked when demolition exercise come. You will see land titles, and sometimes there are people who are also in the government that have land in those areas, who have been former members of parliament, former members of security security. And you ask yourself, how did they have access to this area?
Okay, Mr. Elijah, I want us to look at the bill that already is raising so much dust out here. Finance law for 2023. Many persons may be angry with the government when the actions or the motives of the government are actually very genuine. What stops our MPs who voted this bill to come back and explain to Cameroonians the goodness in this law? Why should Cameroonians be speculating on the motives for what they now have to pay?
Mr. Lira, I hope you are living in Cameroon.
We are talking about accountability. We are talking about accountability here. MPs are voted by the people. Now they have passed this law. Cameroonians are working. They are eating. They are biting their tongues and gnashing their teeth. Yet nobody is explaining anything to anybody.
That is why I asked the question that I hope you are living in Cameroon, because since you were born, how many times have you seen an MP in Cameroon come back and begin to explain what was voted in the parliament? How many times? Since I grew up, I've never seen one come back to the people to explain what was voted in the parliament. They come with their jeeps and, with their green, red, yellow, and, attend parties and ceremonies and whatnot. It doesn't happen in Cameroon. So that question is a moot question. It is because these people do not really represent the people that they say they're representing. They are there for their stomach. That's why they don't care. They don't care. Ask yourself the question, the 5 million or the 10 million, I don't remember exactly how much has been given them as special grants. How many MPs have you seen actually come back home and implemented that 5 million and done something that is tangible that people can say, this is it? Some of them will buy bags of rice. Some of them will give a little bit of money here, a little bit of money here, and that's it, and they are gone. It is because these people do not actually represent the people. They represent their stomach. That is the reality of the country which we live. If these people represented the people, somebody would stand up. Somebody from Furawa would stand up and say, wait a minute. The moment you increase this vignette tax, for me to move from Furawa to Wum or from Wave or to Bamenda, it means that the taxi man or whoever has the car is going to double the transport for me, and I will not be able to travel. That is what says. That is what the parliament, the parliamentarian is supposed to stand up in the parliament and say, my people are going to suffer because of this bill. You wouldn't see that. That tells you that these people, as I said before, are maintaining party lines. They are there for themselves and not there for the people. Because just like you said, if people can come back home and try to explain, but again, what are you going to explain? You're going to explain to the people that, the government has the right to tax the bags of rice now, instead of you buying, like Jarvis was explaining, instead of you buying 1 cup of dairy for $25, whatever it is now, you're buying it for $75. How can you explain that to the local person when he's going through pain and there's hyperinflation in the country as we speak, and everybody is suffering because the bottom line has been completely cut off? Like I said before, salaries have been flat for those who own salaries, those who are farmers, their products now going to the market, nothing is working. The transporters now are going to hike up their own prices because that tax that they have been asked to pay now is going to be passed on to somebody, and everything, it is a system where, as I said before, the government books is in bed, and they will go at every length to get money. And how are they going to get money? They go to that sector where they know that it is a bread and butter issue. They know that everybody will buy rice. They know that everybody will travel from one spot to the other. Therefore, those vignettes, those those car owners must buy it, and they, in one way or the other, transfer that tax onto the passengers because they will increase their prices. They know very well that people are going to sit in for competitive entrance exam, and it becomes a cash cow, just like Dr. Ndimancho said. Even if nobody succeeds in that entrance exam, they have made their money. The government knows what it's going for, but it is a common man that suffers. Let's play here. Every government has the right to collect taxes. That is not a point of debate here. But when you have incremental tax without any corresponding value to the tax that you have collected, that is what we see in Cameroon. There is no increment in job. We do not see any infrastructure. All we see is COVID gate, this one gate, elephant projects about Olembe, corruption of high level. That money collected is not going to any gainful thing that the government is going. It's going into private pocket. That's why everybody is complaining. And government knows very well that when they tax your pocket, like we talk about the mobile wallet, there is no other way. You are going to pay that money one way or the other. The government is going for the target, going for the kill. And those are vulnerable sectors. As we speak, the inflation in Cameroon is getting close to 15% as we speak. Hyperinflation. And instead of government getting it under control, the government is making the situation worse. As I said before, all these taxes will be passed on to the next set of people in one way or the other. Like, let's give an example, like those transporters whose cars have been taxed through that vignette, they are going to increase the price of transportation. They will pass it on to the population, and the population are the ones to suffer. So again and again, these people, to answer your question directly, these people don't represent the people. Because if you represent the people, you will come home. First of all, you will fight for them, Mr. Leo.
Yeah,
you will fight for them.
Yeah, but Mr. Elijah, you cannot claim they don't represent the people. They were elected by the people. They are on behalf of the people. They did not elect themselves.
Mr. Leo, let's take, for example, I want to be very honest here and sincere. Let's take, for example, those from the Northwest and the Southwest in the war zones. If you have an election where you have 5% of the people, or 3% of the person, is that the population? Is that representative of the people?
Yeah, those
no.
Those who voted for on behalf of the people.
Yeah, because the constitution gives right that if it's 5 people that voted.
Yeah, the people those who mustered the courage to go vote voted on behalf of the people.
It is not representative democracy. It is not. That is not representative democracy.
Yeah, but that's what the law says.
Yes, constitutionally, that's what the law says.
Yeah, but again, the point is, it is not representative. If it was representative, let me put it to you this way: it was representative. Yeah. Those people will go back to those locations and explain their rationale to those people. Those people will speak up because in those war zones, for example, the tragedy and the pain that those people are going through, these people will not vote for this sort of a law because that law is like killing your own people. Okay, if you actually represented the people.
Okay, Mr. I'll be getting back to you, Mr. Elijah, but let's look at the percentage increase also. Dr. Ndimancho, we have the fiscal stamp that moves from 1,000 to 1,500. And then you have the other aspects also. We have 30%, 50% increment. Is this not also too much?
It is not only too much, Mr. Leo, it's exorbitant. And I think...
why not at 100 or...
Yeah. You know, at first we thought the government is trying to protect fraudsters and from getting into the system. And we, before coming to this fiscal stamp, which is digital, we first had what we call the physical stamp, meaning that it was manual. I'm not talking about fiscal money, but money, the fiscal. Exactly, the PHY, physical. Before we came to the fiscal, because we understood the government, the explanation was that a lot of people were pirating. And mind you, I talked about the issue of corruption. And one of the networks that pirated the fiscal stamp was found in the Ministry of Finance, and it was discovered. That is why they changed from the fiscal to the digital. And we thought that, okay, the government has won there, and that they had actually will have the money they expected from stamps to do whatever they want to do with it. But just when we thought we have seen the worst, we are again faced with this deplorable situation, with this unexplainable situation, whereby now the government thinks that, okay, they have fought the issue of corruption, now they have to increase again the price 50%. I think, are they pushing Cameroonians to the wall? I really want to ask a rhetorical question, because there are certain things that you do, and you want to tease people. You want to see what the reaction of the people are. I think that that's exactly what the government wants to do to Cameroonians. That they want to tease Cameroonians. You increase a price of fiscal stamp, knowing that those who go in for those stamps are those of the middle class. I gave an example of those who are in most need of those stamps, and I talked about the basic education teachers, I talked about secondary school teachers, and I talked about higher education teachers. And you know, in Cameroon, when they say you have the teacher salary, then you know that you cannot really pay equitably your bill to the end of the month. And knowing that this is the majority of people who use these stamps, and then knowing that these people who use this stamp are people who are considered as a middle class, those who are barely managing, those who actually are the family people, and who actually manage to keep their family together, and they do this again to them. And then we say, isn't it too much? It's like they are going to bear so much now this time around. So I really think, Mr. Luo, we push back the question to the parliamentarians. You talked about parliamentarians being voted by the grassroots, but I want to take the debate to another lane and to say that Cameroonians need to get interested in politics. Yes, Cameroonians need to get interested in politics. We are having this issue because Cameroonians are not interested in politics. This is where the problem is coming from. And at the end of it all, you see that somebody comes 10 days, 15 days to the end of election because the person has been maybe had worked and gotten retired, or the person has been selling tomatoes in the market, and he has built a small house, and then he comes and preaches to the people and they vote him. I think that Cameroonians need to know that we need to go beyond this, and that to vote the people's representative, there are certain criteria that we need to follow. That is what politics is all about, and that's what makes for the beauty of politics. The beauty of politics is when there is that savoir-faire. And when it is that knowledge, when somebody knows exactly what is going in for. Because if you cannot come and argue to the people and tell your people straightforwardly what do they expect from you, how do you expect the person to defend you in the National Assembly? I once quote an example of a Senegalese who was voted, in the French Parliament in the early years of the fight for independence because of his manifesto. People should be able to show what they are able to do. But alas, we have parliamentarians in Cameroon who can barely even defend. They don't even know what the parliament is all about. And they are there. They sit there like photos. They are wallflowers. And we need to get to a different level.
You cannot also conclude.
No, Mr. Luo. It is not conclusion. We are in an intellectual debate whereby tomorrow I will be a parliamentarian and you should put me to the test and ask me, what do I know? Can I defend a bill? If they read a bill, if they write a bill and give to me to criticize, because about the critique of the bill, and the critique is also because the language that is written in the bill, it needs to be understood too. Who are those who go to parliament? Are they those who can read the language of that bill and understand and explain to the people? Because sometimes we can be blaming them when they are also helpless. They cannot read and understand. Nemo that code non-habit. You cannot give what you do not have. I think that's what it is. And let parliamentarians know that they can be able to sacrifice even their own post of responsibility for the people. I just read about Somia Suluhu of Tanzania, who has cancelled, the independence celebration because she feels that there are people who need that money for celebration. There are people who are in dire need, and she is giving it to build dormitories for those young girls who are in need, who have special needs. I think that this is the kind of politics that we need to play, not like politics to vent. We need to get beyond this. We need to be able to go to mount and get over this. Okay, that our parliamentarians should be able to show proof of the knowledge of politics and be able to explain to the people exactly what they are. We should take them to task.
Good evening to you all in the studio. Please, a country is never built on speeches or promises, but by the revolution of the people. Okay, Judge from Yaoundé say, I love you with all it takes. We don't have elected parliamentarians in the Northwest. Be objective. Has a bill from the C government ever been rejected in the parliament? The prime media is critical and corrective. Has the power that be ever corrects or taken lessons from someone? Lastly, is there a parliamentarian from the Northwest who can say his being there is not by appointment? Okay. So many questions from a brother in Yaoundé. Good evening, Mr. Leo. They are going to increase salaries too. Stateless Nazi is writing from New Bell. Good evening, Mr. Leo. I think those parliamentarians or senators are not rightfully representing us, but their families, being a senator or a parliamentarian, is just a job opportunity where you hustle for your family and close ones. One day, God could judge we all. Okay, yes. But this is also what many Cameroonians are worried about. We are going to witness. It's true that they conclude that the target is on those who can afford to get a car, under the understanding that these are guys who have money, but if you have to tax the vignette, you have to tax the roadworthiness certificate and a host of others. These cars ply our routes, and almost everybody goes to the market, goes to school using these cars.
There are about 4 main essential services. That is the things we cannot do without. 1 is health, 2 is transportation. The next essential service that we are talking about is groceries, and the last, which is the communication, that's journalism. These are essential services. That's why you see during the period of shutdown, they could avoid normal public transport, but goods were moving from left to right. This is simple. I made a statement that before coming to your question, Dr. Micheal Ndimancho said, and about what happened in Tanzania or Mama Samori. And I also said from the beginning of this program that we've not had the celebration of our national day since when COVID-19 started to date. And what have they done with the money? That's a question mark. If Cameroonians were able to be told, if we were told that this celebration cost us this year, we did not celebrate, we used the money to do this, and this is the result, I think that it will pacify Cameroonians when taxes are going to be increased, either directly or indirectly. Now, people who thought that this is a tax only for the rich are making a monumental mistake. In fact, what they are doing is that they are committing a fallacy, a great fallacy of argumentative volume. Because if you look at what we have, as far as that is concerned, take for example, in Douala, students who go to school either uses the normal taxis, and now if they use the taxis, those school buses need to have roadworthiness. Those school buses need to also have vignette because they cannot use the road anyhow. By default, the school fees will have to increase because these schools will definitely look for a way to cover it up. Remember that the government sometimes gives selective subvention to secondary schools. You move now to universities. Private universities themselves don't even receive subvention, but they have school buses that transport students from school, like in Douala. Now go to Boya, where there's no bike, where we don't have bike at all. A child will leave my 16 to go to Balingwa Gamasku Muliko Boya. From Mile 16 to Balingwa Gamasku Muliko Boya, those who don't know where I'm talking about the southwest region. Now, from there to Balingwa Gamasku Muliko Boya, usually it used to cost 100 francs CFA. That was between 2005. 100 francs CFA. But when things started moving haywire, it moved to 150. And when the crisis started, it moved to 200. Now, a student who has to leave that will take a taxi since there's no bike. Now, the bike taxi man has to pay Vignette and Worthiness, which has been multiplied to 50%. He has to add that added to other nocturnal money that they give along the road. I don't want to call names. They give along the road as part of their passes. They have to add that inclusive. You see that the transportation of a school child from Mile 16 to Balingwa Gamasku Moliko Boya from 250 will move to 300 francs or 350. Now, the mother who sells in the market, who sells, let's say, 1,000 a day and removes 250 to give to that child, will now move 300 and give to that child. That mother is on a deficit of 150. That mother who has to buy a liter of red oil, that man who sells that mother a liter of red oil at retail price has to go to Moyoka to buy this red oil to come and sell in my 16 market. When he pays the money to go to Moyoka, he has to use a transport service that has paid Vignette and roadworthiness alongside other nocturnal 500 or 1,000 along the route. Now that money will not be added to the oil that is coming to sell. So if he has to retail a liter at 800 with this increment now that the driver has to commission the wholesaler come now and commission the retailer now will buy at an increased price. You come now to a bag of rice, those who are selling rice. Bag of rice. If you want to come to Douala to buy a bag of rice, you have to pay the Vignette, you have to pay this. Now in the simplest word, Mr. Kum, the tax is on the final consumer. And who is the final consumer? It is that person who has the lowest money in his coffers that can barely eat $1 a day. I don't like this thing called GDP because I think that GDP is wrongly calculated, especially in Cameroon, where you take the total wealth of the nation and divide by the people. And you ask yourself, the total wealth of the nation owned by who? A handful. And now you divide by those of us who have not even eaten since morning. I say that this is the world, this is the GDP of Cameroon. It's not true. GDP in African countries are not well calculated because of the fact that the wealth of the nation is in the hands of the few. If the wealth of the nation was in the hands of the majority, then I go by the context of GDP. But if we look at the socio-demographic factors of leadership in Africa, the context of GDP should not be looked into in the contextual West definition. Because in Cameroon, like I said, their worth no tongue can tell. How will somebody embezzle 10 billion, 15 billion? Their worth no tongue can tell. It is true that the worth of corruption no tongue can tell. And the index of that tax will fall on the final consumer. Let me use another example. If you look at these people who deals with the transportation of timber, now, Vignette has increased, roadworthiness has increased. They go and buy timber, they come and sell to local carpenter. The carpenter needs to go and register his business. He has to pay fiscal stamp to register his business or to pay the tax. He needs to buy fiscal stamp per year to renew. And when he buys fiscal stamp, transportation has increased. So we have a double index of 2. Fiscal stamp and transportation. Now, he comes to the final product. He has to sell a bench to you or a table to you. By default, if the price was 8.5, he has to sell it at 10.5. Now, it now boils down to the question, our MPs, do they really know what the common man, what we in the street that struggle on daily basis, that move under the scorching sun faces? If they do, I bet you they will not deliberate this or they will reduce the impact. We are not saying, as Elijah said, that the government should not collect tax. The government should, and it is a responsibility, as I earlier mentioned, that these taxes are very necessary because they provide vital services. But the question is, how much vital services have been provided since the time of the New Deal government to the current state? How much of these vital services? You go to let's take Daido, Douala, Bonamusadi, for example. How many of these vital services are being provided in terms of water, in terms of electricity, in terms of road network? Go to Boya. I just used an example. Do you know that if you are not a good driver that uses that Boya road, you easily have tire puncture or accident because of the numerous dentation along the road? The road was carved and areas were removed that they will come and refill. As we speak, Mr. Leo, for more than 3 weeks or going to 1 month, that the refill has not been done. And that is is a highway, major highway linking 3 divisions, 3 regions. It links the northwest, it links the littoral, it links the center region. And why not also link, other regions? That road. But you ask yourself if that is what the government should not focus on.
Okay. Mr. Leo, good evening, please. I wish when you have such topics, invite some of these statements or alert them to follow up the program. It is just so sad because they will still go on to institute the bill. Good evening, Mr. Leo. I'm a listener of your program on a daily basis. My regards to the honorable panelists tonight. Not leaving you, Mr. Leo, for the great job you do every day on my media prime. Henry is writing from Gabon. Thank you, Henry. Hello, Mr. Leo. Your guests in the studio have said it all. We are suffering in the villages and don't even know who our parliamentarians, senators are. Panken Yafe is writing from Bangolan. Boris writing from Douala. The Cameroon government is not serious. Good evening, Mr. Kum and panelists. An interested topic today. With all this giving to unemployed Cameroonians in the name of stamps, I want to 1,000 from control is going to. I want to suggest if our government can introduce a daily tax ticket to each vehicle and taxi running on the roads, that they can reduce the corruption and reap more income or taxes. The uniformed men will leave the highway to chase criminals than hanging on there because of money, or tell them they shall be paid out of 1,000 collected, and you will see positive change. Felix is writing from Bamenda. Profound greetings from my end to you, great analysts in the studio. Shame to those who unrighteous people. Okay, just there is no dustbin for a country to be discarded in Cameroon. Okay. Good evening, Mr. Leo. Please ask the man to speak. Okay, small. Okay. Good evening, Mr. Leo, and your panelists. What's happening in our country today is so devastating, and it should be called for concern. There has never been a day that we heard of increment of salaries. If you go to government school, their fees are steep. Same with government hospitals, very expensive. To do a car documents has increased by 50% from the former price, for the fact that car users pay toll gate, settle police. This is obnoxious. Martinez Manga writing there, all these taxes are pushed to the common man who already have a lower living standard. Imagine an increase in transportation, basic commodities, etc. is going to render the standards of living far lower. I think the government should think of other means of raising finances without penalizing the common man. Kiven Terence writing from Bomenda. Okay. Mr. Elijah, we have seen Cameroonians complain about price hikes of basic commodities in Cameroonian markets. We were expecting our MPs to also raise or question government on what they are doing to lower these prices. Seemingly, they are not concerned, or they, I don't know whether their hands are tied, but does it tell that they have a feel of what their family members and members of their constituencies go through?
Mr. Leo, let me begin by mentioning something here. I went to school in a country where the taxes is astronomically high, 45% of taxes. And every citizen of that country pays that tax joyfully. Why do they pay that tax joyfully? They pay that tax joyfully because they see what their government does with that tax. There's something we call in taxation VAT, value-added taxes. If the government came out with some sort of a VAT tax and say, we supply these services or we pump this amount of money into the economy, we are seeing an incremental services or production or whatever sector it is, and we think that because that sector is making good and is doing well, we think we should be able to tax that sector. That will be a justifiable tax. The government builds the ring road from Bamenda to Douala, or builds the road from Douala, and make things more, palatable for the people. and improve the lives of the people and improve services. And then the government goes ahead and says, because of the value, the added value that has been added into these services, we think we can pull out some income by taxing it. It will be justifiable. If the government goes into maybe the other, whatever sector, it could be the petroleum sector, it could be the road sector, it could be infrastructure, it could be whatever, and pump in money, and then the added value, the services, the added income, the added things that comes out from what the government has done, then the government then tax it. We call value added tax. But all these services that the government is adding, the government is taxing, they have no value that has been added. Incremental value has not been added that the government is taxing. Government is just taxing people, putting an extra burden on the people. That is where the cry of the people is. Now to come back to the question, whether these MPs think about their families or think about the people. We already discussed that these MPs, to be honest with you, when you look at the parliament, they are reading a bill. You have MPs that are sleeping. MPs that don't even understand how voluminous the bill is. And some of them even complain, they brought the bill, it was 1,000 pages, they brought it a night before, we had no time to read it. But even after that murmuring, they will still put their stamp and vote and say yes. Because of this so-called party discipline that is killing Cameroon. And number three, something that Dr. Ndimancho already mentioned, which I want to boil up, because there is so much apathy in our nation. We had the wallet tax, or they call it mobile money tax. How many people actually even said anything apart from a few TV stations like yours that had programs that people talked about it? Everything went quiet. There's so much apathy in our country. Everybody says, on va faire comment. That seems to be the language. On va faire comment. On va faire comment. Nobody seems to think that, wait a minute, why would government be taxing our pocket? Why would government be taxing the basic commodity that is right? Why would government be taxing the transportation system which we use every day? Why would government be taxing physical stuff that we're going to need for all this? Who was going to pay that tax? As I already said before, that tax gets passed to the common man, the consumer. Make no mistake that the consumer is going to pay that tax in one way or the other, because the person that gets billed will pass that tax on to the other person in one way or the other. So to answer your question, these, as I said from the beginning, these people, to be honest with you, I'll still repeat my word, these are not the representative of the people. A real representative of people will stand and fight and talk about it and say, look, my people are going to suffer because of this bill. My people are going to go through a lot of pain because of this bill, but they wouldn't do it because they represent their parties. They don't represent the people. They represent their parties. Since you were born, how many people have you seen come back to explain and hear? First and foremost, Mr. Leo, before a bill is voted, even according to Cameroon Assembly law, the MPs are supposed to go back to their constituency, get the opinion of their people, so that when they are voting according to what their people told them. When did you see that happen in Cameroon? No. They stay in their glass houses, and then the bill comes, they sleep in the following morning and get up, and the bill is so many pages, they just put a signature on it. These people do not have the aspiration of the people at heart. And again, the government in Cameroon is corrupt. There is so much corruption, like many people have already mentioned, all these gate, COVID gate, the Renko gate, whatever. That is what is siphoning money. And then the war in the Northwest and Southwest, it is siphoning money. The government needs to look into what is siphoning money from this country. I said from the beginning that these people need to be cut off. When I was talking about, I wasn't talking about parliamentarians. Of course, they are voted. I'm talking about all those minister delegate, minister without portfolio, minister with portfolio, minister in charge of this. In a small country like that, you have close to, I don't know how many ministers and portfolios. Those without portfolio, what are they doing? It's just a thieving scheme for people to steal money, to reward their accolades. And that is what is killing this country. Until the government goes to look at what is killing us, we can tax the whole country, tax everybody, tax the man in the street, tax the woman, tax the farmer, tax the teachers, tax everybody. It will not solve the problem of this country. If we are talking about solution-oriented, value-oriented solutions, let the government go into value-added tax. Before you tax any sector of the economy, evaluate what value has been added by what you did the previous budget. If there's an added value, then you tax it. As long as you have not added value to the economy, don't tax somebody's pocket. Don't tax the people's wallet. That is what the problem is.
Some televiewers just ask about if government badly needs money to take care of certain aspects, why should government not start by reducing the running budgets of the respective ministries? That is, we see a net decrease in their running budget, daily budget, to show that government is taking money from amongst its respective ministries to finance certain aspects of our national life.
That is a question many people will ask, but you should know the government that you are talking about. Because the government you are talking about are the very people who form a clique.
But MPs are there to check government. Why can the MPs not remind?
But the fact is that the
ministers
MPs,
that you have this very fat budget. Why don't you reduce them?
But the issue is that the MPs are accomplices. They are at the mercy of those ministers, and the ministers are supposed to be at the mercy of MPs. So in Cameroon we have something. I mean, it's a paradox. Because the ministers are supposed to be at the mercy of MPs. The ministers are supposed to beg the MPs to do, maybe to vote this budget or whatever. But on the contrary, the MPs are there. I mean, they think that they should do the favor to the minister, because afterward you find them in government ministers' cabinets sitting there and waiting for contracts. Yes. This is where the problem is in Cameroon. Everything is a paradox in Cameroon. I mean, I don't understand. The MP is supposed to be a lawmaker. The MP is supposed to want to call the shot. The MP is the one who is supposed to tell the minister, stop what you are doing. I mean, but on the contrary, we find the minister who is out there, who passes and sees an MP sitting in front of his door, and the minister snubs at the MP. The MP is because if he is okay, I have to beg the minister, we have to vote that budget. Because when we vote that budget for this ministry, we'll come back later and ask for contract, and they will give us. Because we are not there to serve the nation. We are there to serve ourselves. And just to say that, Cameroon in the first place is a buy and sell country. We are a buy and sell country. Mr. Elijah talked about the issue of VAT. VAT is value added tax. You don't add, don't add tax on something that you have not originally created. Those who have VAT are actually those who create. Those who create, those who actually produce. We do not produce in Cameroon. We buy and we sell. We depend on external trade. We buy. We go click on all of those things and we resell. But unfortunately, there is an issue of VAT in Cameroon, which is not supposed even to exist. You put VAT is on something that you have produced and is original, and then you want to tax the value that you have produced. How do you, tax a value of something that someone has bought, and even a third hand, a fourth hand, even fifth hand? That's what we have here. But you add value to it and then you tax it. It doesn't make any sense. So I think I come back to the issue of education. I don't only think that is a population. First of all, I talked about the population that needs education. I think that even our MPs, they need an education. Maybe you should have a refresher course. Each time that there is parliamentary election, they should bring MPs together and actually give them a refresher course on their expectation. Maybe they should have what they call the cahier de charge. What are they? I really still believe that there are many MPs who do not know why they are at the hemicycle. No, frankly, I know, I still vehemently and vehemently believe that there are MPs who don't know why they are there. And that there are MPs who just sit there, who have never put up their hand to say, please, the president, Monsieur the President, I really have this thing, I want to object this thing. I believe this, they don't say the truth. That there are MPs who have never objected, and they are all yes, as what the president has said is true. As we used to say to the early fathers, the reverend fathers in the Catholic Church, what do you father don't talk not true? And this is exactly what is going on in the National Assembly in Cameroon. That you have MPs who cannot really differentiate what many of them, don't be surprised that many of them come out after the budget vote, and then they hear about the echoes of the vote, of what they voted, but outside from the citizens. And they didn't know that that's what they voted. I'm telling you, that is what is happening in Cameroon. Many of them come and hear the news about what they voted from citizens. Mr. Leo, I mean, this is a fact. I mean, they have to explain this issue. And that's why I'm of the opinion that they need education. Because it doesn't suffice for you to have worked for 50 years and then you go on retirement and then you want to, as a retirement benefit, you want to stand as an MP. Let us know the responsibility of who an MP is. Even the MPs have the authority, even, I mean, the MPs are those that we have to look up to. To the presidency, we look up to the MPs. To the cabinet, we look up to MPs. To be able to defend us. But how can you defend a people when you do yourself, you don't know your left from your right? When laws are voted, I mean, you are supposed to be actually there to tell them, I mean, the National Assembly, to argue and tell them that this is the consequence of this law. And other countries, they look at things in 50 years, 20 years, 10 years. But we look at our own things in 1 year.
Okay.
And that is where the problem comes from.
Good evening, Mr. Liu. The system in power is not creative. There are other avenues to raise public funds, like creation of companies and agricultural corporations. Money from fiscal stamp can never benefit the state and citizens. GDP increases when the country produces and exports more than it imports. That's how a nation gets a positive balance of payment. Shame on our MPs. They are looking for money to steal and invest abroad and spend with their children in Europe. At the end, only the poor class suffers. We need a change in power with great minds, else rupture will meet us at this level. Okay? Agbo is writing from Kumba. Good evening to you, Agbo. Good evening. It's rather unfortunate that the so-called parliamentarians who were supposed to be checking government actions have failed woefully. Left to me, the parliamentarians, or you want to say the National Assembly and the Senate should be dissolved for. I don't see the functions. Now Cameroonians are not living, but merely surviving. They should instead slash the cost of administration of those top government officials instead of pushing us with all sorts of tax increment. It's sad, Mr. Liu. Anu Terence is writing from Boya. Good evening, Mr. Liu. Truth be told, the MPs have failed completely. What they are concerned about is about their families. We can't be crying day in, day out of hardship, but yet taxes are instead increased. The common man face it than any other Cameroonian. My regards to Dr. Ndimancho, Micheal. Good evening, Mr. Liu and panelists. It's rather sad to see that the lawmakers endorse taxes on a tax base which burden will be borne by the common man. This further puts more pain to the common man. These MPs do not have the people whom they pretend to represent at heart. Enoaku is writing from Bomenda. Good evening, Mr. Kum. My regards to all your wonderful guests. I am dumbfounded by the kind of policies implemented by the policy makers. In a situation that we are right now, monitoring policies can never solve the problem but create more problem. Fiscal policy is more sustainable than monetary policy because it creates jobs and turn around the economy. Please let the Economist education policy makers. Okay, thank you. Sue Francis writing from Bomenda. In the case, let the government not be surprised to see state workers asking for increment in salaries. Good evening to you all in the studio. Please, Dr. Ndimancho, politics or elections or voting in the country is just for formality. No problem in this country can be solved by elections or voting, as you are saying. George is writing from Bomenda. Yes, now, is this not the problem we are facing, where people think that they should not take up positions as mayors and MPs to fix the nation? They think, okay, elections will never fix this country, and we keep crying year in, year out, mandate in, mandate out.
That's the problem, because earlier when we started, at one point in time I said I blame the people. I blame the people because they have decided not to be politically conscious and not to think that their vote counts. And if they think that nothing changes, I want to ask this question. Why is it that during election, some parties move around and give 1,000 for people to go and vote? Is it because they don't know the election counts? Is it if they think they have already won? Why giving this 1,000 for people to go and vote? Why also mobilizing people to go and vote? If they think that nothing counts, they have already won the election. Why would they still go for campaign and call our mothers in the quarters and give them bags of rice and salt and maggi that please, you people should go and vote us? If you think they know they've already won the election, you should be reminded that the Constitution of Cameroon is on general, the vote count is on absolute majority. It's not about percentage of those who turn out. It's on absolute majority, meaning that if Dr. Micheal Ndimancho is standing in as an MP in Gokitunja, if he's standing as an MP, if 2 people go and vote and 3 people vote and 2 people vote Dr. Micheal Ndimancho, he wins the election. So it's not whether Gokitunja has 30,000 people and 20,000 registered voters and 2 people go and vote. You say no, it's the election is not legit. It's legit. And that's the misconception that politicians have used to make us feel like voting does not count, in which in real terms it does. Look at 1992. Look at the turnout of the election and come now to the existing reality. The reason why elections are easily rigged is when there's low turnout of the election. But when you have high turnout, it's difficult for it to be rigged. And also, another point is, it doesn't just suffice you to just go and cast your ballot. It also suffices you to protect your vote by being there when it's counted. We saw how it happened, how Macky Sall came to power in Senegal. Macky Sall came to power in Senegal to the electronic counting where elections were being uploaded. People were counting their votes on the digital platform. Telephones were used and they easily summarize and know that, okay, we can protect our vote, we have this. Let me be very honest with you. For you to win general election in Cameroon, you must have polling agents at all the polling stations across the national territory. Then you can say that, okay, you have a fair representative of election. Let me be very honest again. Look at the just last 2018 election. How many total number of persons voted? You have about 3 million plus. How many voted for the ruling party? You have about 2 million plus. And look at the number that voted for the ruling party. It tells you that it is a genuine number, because if you look at the total number of government delegates, look at the total number of those who are in top positions, you count their population, it tells you that it can give you a minimum, at least an objective reality. Now, my dear brothers and sisters, the truth of the matter here is they tell you election don't count. They tell you nothing will change. They tell you that if you go and vote, they will still steal the election. It is a farce. These are ploy to discredit you from going to the election, for going to vote, because they know that your vote do count. If your vote doesn't count, wait during the election season. If people will not come to give you money to go and vote, if they think they have won the election, why would they still come to give you money to go and vote? If they think they have won the election, why would they still move from media to media? You think it's legitimacy they are looking for? It's not just legitimacy. They need your vote to legitimize the process and rally up. Let me tell you this. If you don't go and vote, the foolish people that you allowed that they should lead over you will make bad laws, and you'll be affected by those bad laws. And that's why you see in university we have top professors. They criticize, they give big grammar, but because they don't take part in the electoral process as candidate, we have those whom you think are not qualified leading us. That's why you see we are in this mess. If, for example, you are criticizing, not because we have seen that this tax has increased drastically 50%, because we are conscious. If we are taking this position, we would have read the bills. Dr. Micheal rightly puts it. Some of these MPs don't even read the bills. As also you see, Mr. Elijah said, sometimes they give 1,000 pages, it's bulky, they just count, and sometimes they are even sleeping. But for those who actually have it in mind, look at the just ended Kenya election. A lot of the turnout was massive. If you look at the current Nigeria campaign as it's ongoing, we have 11 million registered additional voters. Why? Because they know that their voices count. When President Ruto in Kenya was voted, his campaign promise was that he will not receive loan. He will not take more loan. He will look for a way to magufullize the economy, to follow the road of John Pombe Magufuli. But when he entered office, he saw the reality. He saw that there was need for him to take loan so that they can invest in production and do more of exportation to pay back this loan. He went and talked with his government and they approved the loan, and Kenyans were happy and nobody objected. If we can collect this tax and you do see genuinely, no Cameroonians will complain. You can raise it to 40%, no Cameroonians will complain. But in a state where the drinking water of the people in Monya, Ekona, and the rest is not equal to the flushing to the water, the toilet water that some people use to flush their toilet in Yaoundé, in their houses, who are MPs, it tells you that there is a problem. And so the road network also is a problem. The market is a problem.
Yeah, there are some persons in Munya who also live very well.
I'm talking about the general majority.
As well as some persons in Yaoundé who do not have good drinking water. It is relative.
Yeah, I'm just talking about
because you used a very blanket word that people in Yaoundé, this is what is happening. Mr. Elijah, now in this circumstance, what happens? How do we pacify, make the people to understand the reason why they are going to be paying more in 2023? Do we expect our MPs to talk, convince the people?
Mr. Leo, permit me. I want to comment on the question that you asked, Jarvis. That's a very critical question. The question about voter apathy. It's a very critical thing that we need to talk about. The first thing I want to say is this. It's a 2-point blame. It is true that the population of Cameroon are so apathetic to voting because of what has happened. People need to go out and vote. Don't assume that, the voting has been rigged, therefore you cannot vote. Please go out and vote. Your vote counts. It doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter who it is. You have a candidate. Go out and vote. But we must also lay the blame equally on the government that be. In every civilized country, it is the government that encourages people to go out and make their choice. The government does not tell them, go and vote for me, go and vote for me, but they encourage everybody, go out and vote. But if you have a government that is systematically disfranchising the people, that tells you that there is a problem somewhere. So let us not just lay the blame on the people and say, oh, there is voter apathy in Cameroon, people don't want to vote. Where did that come from? It came from somewhere. There have been systematic voter disenfranchisement in Cameroon by the government. So the government also had to do something about this. Make sure that they encourage people to go to the poll. So it is not just a blame on the people alone. The powers that be also need to take responsibility to encourage the people to go out and vote. Now, back to your question, what will the MP do in the state? The budget that has been voted. This is my expectation, Mr. Leo. Here's my expectation. The budget has been voted. It's been voted into power. It's going to be executed. They expect the parliamentarians to go back to the people and say, okay, out of this budget, this is what we are going to get. We're going to get road number 1. We're going to get this hospital. We're going to get this school. We're going to get construction of that dam. We're going to get this. As long as they are able to explain what that money is going to go into, Mr. Leo, that might pacify the people, even with the pain. As I told you before here that I went to school in a country where they were paying 45% of their income as taxes, and they were very happy because they saw what their government was doing with that money. If these people can go back to their people and explain what they're going to do with this money, and expectantly the people see what the money is being done, I think everybody will say, okay, you collected this money, we are saying something. The problem that everybody is crying in this nation is because this money is to be collected at the end of the day and nothing is going to be done. That is where everybody feels the pinch. If the money and people see what's going into, that's what I talked about, the value added tax. If you collect tax and you add value and then you tax the incremental value from whatever you implemented or whatever goods and services that you produce out of that tax, it is normal. But this is not what we are talking in this country. We're talking about tax the poor, make the rich richer. Tax the poor, make the rich richer. Tax the poor, let the thieves and all the corrupt people steal and more and more. That is where Cameroonians are feeling the pinch. Again, like you actually asked the question, if these people can go back, gather the people. Some time ago, I made this statement, and it's very, very viable. Let me say it here. If you have a budget where one province, the allocation for 2 provinces, like Northwest and Southwest, is not up to one province, the other province, then you ask yourself, those MPs from the Northwest and Southwest, were they hypnotized? Why can't they ask that question? That two provinces that produce close to 45% of the GDP of the country. You make a national budget and their own share of the cake is not up to what another province is getting, one single province. It doesn't matter whatever is going on there. It's not justifiable. And they sit quiet. That's why I tell you, Mr. Liu, again, whether you disagree or not, these are not the representative of the people. These are not people who are representing the people. Otherwise, they will fight. When I say representative, I don't mean that we're not voted in whatever measure, but they are there to represent their stomach. They are not there to represent these people. An MP that is there to represent the people sees the suffering of his people, sees the pain of his people, goes back to his people and say, okay, this is what we did in the parliament. I think our own part of the cake is this. We're going to get this. We're going to get this. But you're going to see that happen? No, they're going to come with their Pajeros and their Jeep and they're roaming the streets and attending party with SGOs and all whatnot. That is the pain of the people. They pay the taxes. They do not see the gain.
Okay, they pay taxes, they don't see the gain. Dr. Micheal Ndimancho, what should our MPs in this circumstance, if you were an MP, what would you do to explain, to make members of your constituencies to understand why you voted this bill?
Well, an MP should have a reason to say why there's an increment in the fee for fiscal stamp, because those things come to explanation, and it takes actually somebody who is knowledgeable to be able to explain to the understanding of people. Sometimes they say you cannot eat an omelette if you don't break the egg. It is important. We know that some of these things are harsh, but then other countries, they do tax. There's taxation everywhere in every country. It can never always go well for people when it comes to taxing, you know. I mean, even the person who has quite some money is afraid. Even the richest person is afraid of taxes. But what consoles is what those taxes are meant for. So if I were an MP, I would give back to my people, especially an MP who is able to question the government. Because the only problem is I will be guilty if I cannot question the government. I will not have what to tell my people. I will then, if I'm able to question the government, I will tell my people, look, this increment in taxes that you have seen, it's for your good. Remember, we do not have water in our village. We do not have electricity. We do not have good roads. And that these taxes are for our good. And that the next coming year, in the public investment budget, we hope to see our constituency have a good chunk of that budget that is able to take care of water, take care of electricity, take care of roads, take care of health, hospitals, take care of education. This is what I'll be telling my people. But how can these MPs say? What can they say when they have eaten and they say the mouth that eats doesn't talk? What can these MPs say when they know that they themselves they are just so nonchalant when these bills are being voted? What can they say when they know that they cannot even give a contribution to the National Assembly about what is going on? What can they say when they cannot even read and analyze the bills that are being passed in the National Assembly? What can they say when they really visit their constituency? What can they say when they really meet the people, the grassroots population who voted for them? What can they really say when they have nothing to say? And I think that if I were there, and I will not venture to get into the National Assembly if I do not have anything to tell my people, because I am supposed to be accountable to my people. And of course, the people who are well educated in politics know that they are supposed to ask me questions about the things I have not done. Just take, for example, the 8 million funds that is given to the MP each year for micro project. The MPs come out of the hemicycle for 5 years without buying even a bundle of zinc for a small school in the village. And nobody asked them any question. And they go in for the next mandate of 5 years and nobody asked them a question. So do you think it is a question of the National Assembly voting the budget that they will explain to people, or that they will have the zeal or the zest or the anxiety to go explain to the people, or that they will feel questionable by question by the people to explain? No. I think that you should start from the base, that we should know that Let the population know, because most people don't even know that the MPs, they have small money budget for micro projects. They should know.
It appears it's been stopped this year. The money is going to be used differently. Now, but the people themselves, how can they mount pressure for greater accountability from the MPs? Are they so helpless?
This falls in line with the civil society. Dr. Micheal Ndimancho has a role to play in that. That's right. Because we are talking about the people and the MP, but who teleguides the people? Civil society. It's a civil society that is working in the consciousness of the people to tell them that, hey, you know what? This is what you ought to do. This is what you have to do. But where are the civil society organizations? We only see them when it comes to lofty outing where they have to give money and to say no to the war, no to this, we the tax force, we the this, say this. But when it comes to the reality, you don't see them. So it is not only the people, Micheal, because the people themselves need an actor, need a guide, and that's civil society. And also, it also boils down to opinion leaders in these villages. You know, when it comes to presidential election, we see a motion of support being written and sent to the head of state on behalf of these people, on behalf of these, we the people of this have decided. And we expect these opinion leaders now to rise up and send a motion of request to the head of state that we the people of Noni, we are requesting that since we have given the motion of support to the head of state, with this in mind, we are pleading that the head of state to look into the increment of this so that it can be not cancelled but worked on. A lot of water has gone down the bridge, and the people themselves, Mr. Kum, I must say, they are caught between the devil and the deep blue sea. Why are they caught between the devil and the deep blue sea? The devil is in the fact that they themselves are part of the problem by not actively taking part in the political process. This is how an MP go to campaign in a village. On a good afternoon, oh afternoon, Papa don't talk. Say, if you not vote me as I go, so I will make Papa talk. So make Papa bring road. You will see they will promise what is not in their area to do. We go tie this road where they go for this side, yes. We go do so, yes. And you ask yourself, is it part of the tie? We go be so and so school. And you ask yourself, do the people, if people even know the duties and responsibility of a member of parliament? I'm sure you had organized a program here, if not this last year or this year, where you talked about, does the people know about the duty and responsibility of their parliamentarian? Is it the duty of the parliamentarian to tar roads? Is it the duty of the parliamentarian to build schools? Is it the duty of the parliamentarian to provide potable water? These things are in the public investment budget, and you see they put in the public investment budget, and the parliamentarian comes and campaign on the behest that I will tar road, and at the end of the day, if it's not done, the people say the MP did not work. Whereas the MP has to work by ensuring that legislature that are taken protect the people and is not repugnant to natural justice. We'll talk about natural justice. Natural justice simply means that providing the basic commodities to the people what they need. The people are not asking for you to do skyscrapers. The people are not asking for you to build flyovers in other localities. What they need is potable water, good effective flow of electricity.
Okay.
So conclusively, what I would say is that it takes an effort between the civil society, the MP, and for people to come together and see how they can work for collective goal.
Okay, we want to thank you, Mr. Elijah, for accepting to be part of today's edition of Prime Hour.
Thank you very much for having me, Mr. Leo, and thank you to my co-panelists. It's been a good discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Micheal, for coming.
Thanks so much, Mr. Leo, and my greetings to all the Cameroonians, and to pray that we keep hoping and we have to keep daring. You know, it is not enough to say, it is also important to do.
My job is thank you for coming today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kum and Dr. Micheal Ndimancho. Please, your civil society should help our people.
We want to thank you all who took time off to watch this edition of Prime Hour on My Media Prime. Thank you to you, Eli and Edmond, to you too, Tabi, Tambe Brian, supervising the work that has been done here the entire day of today. Stay blessed. Bye-bye.